Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are hearing us clearly right now this Sunday afternoon. If you're joining us via our Facebook page, welcome po. We'll discuss later kung paano po yung ating mga pagkuha ng certificate of attendance. We'll have a lot of learnings today and we have a very special guest who will conduct the webinar this afternoon. So if you're joining us via our Facebook page, tambay lang po kayo dyan para maka-join po kayo, para sama po kayo sa discussion. Mamaya po, ibibigyan ko po kayo ng way on how you can get your certificate of attendance. For those who are asking if you can still join, yes po, pwede pa po kayong mag-join. All you have to do is make sure that you send to our page or you make sure that you register yourselves through our page para po makuha natin yung inyo pong details para mamaya po for the certificate of attendance. Now, for those who are joining via our Facebook group, Society for the Advancement of HR, meron po tayo dyan link on how to view yun pong ating live webinar for today is as much as possible. Po, join lang po kayo doon if you have comments and if you have questions po pwede nyo pong gamitin. Pwede nyo pong gamitin yung ating comment section para po dun sa inyo pong mga comments. Paano po mag-register? Actually, if you're commenting right now, you are already, if you have sent in your details earlier, you're already registered. If you're already done with the registration and you're commenting, you're actually accessing the webinar right now. Okay, so there's no other links for you to access. Ito na po yun. Okay? So yun po. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone to our speaker for today. So the speaker for today, our topic for today is the new normal in talent acquisition. And our speaker for today has been in the recruitment and talent acquisition industry for a long time. He has over a decade of mastery and experience in talent acquisition, recruitment, executive search, and client management. Right now, he is a full-time HR manager and business partner. He is an active member and one of the board members of the Philippines HR Group, one of the largest group, actually the largest group in the Philippines when it comes to HR professionals and practitioners. He is a passionate HR practitioner, trainer, speaker, and has been a speaker for Uprush for quite some time. He has handled the topic on talent acquisition for quite some time now. Without further ado, let me introduce you all to my esteemed colleague, TJ Pestaño. TJ, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. Thanks, Rona. And good afternoon, everyone. It's funny how that sounded that I'm old. I have a long experience in talent acquisition, which I actually have. But anyway, so this afternoon, well, I hope thank you for attending this webinar and thank you for being with us despite we're all at home and despite the bad weather been raining all day. Hope you're safe and hope you're not flooded. I've heard a lot of areas are already flooded as of this moment. So hopefully you're safe and dry. And so for this afternoon, I'll be discussing the new normal in talent acquisition. What's the current practices? How do you find talent despite these challenging times? How do you conduct interviews and the likes? And then at the latter part of the webinar, we're going to have a question and answer portion. So feel free to message your questions or feel free to type in your questions on the comment box and we'll try to address them later as we go along. Right. So this afternoon, we'll be covering three main topics. The first one is candidates' safety, of course, should be our top priority. And then leveraging the use of technology, and of course, managing candidates' expectations. So we'll be discussing within the next 30, 40, or next hour about these three these three very important points during this time of pandemic. And so before we proceed, before we discuss the candidate safety, or before I jump into those three takeaways, let's first have a quick definition of talent acquisition. So I'm quite sure a lot of you guys have been in the HR industry for quite some time, or at least you've been doing talent HR for at least 1 or 2 years. If you're a fresh grad, if this is your first time being in the HR field or being in the recruitment or talent acquisition field, then we're going to give you a brief description of talent acquisition. So basically, it refers to the process of identifying and acquiring skilled workers to meet your organizational needs. So it's the process. Actually, I would think it's the science. It's the process and it's the science on how to acquire talent for your organization. So it's everything that starts from discussing the job description, discussing it with their hiring manager, down to identifying which avenues of sourcing will you use, posting your job ads, you know, shoulder tapping or getting referrals from your current employees and whatnot until you actually hire the person. So it's the whole process from the moment a position is open until such time the position is filled. But another meaning for talent acquisition is the process of identifying, acquiring, assessing, and hiring candidates to fill open positions in a company. So it's very similar to each other. It's basically the whole process that we undergo from the moment that a position is vacated to such time that we actually hire or we close the position. Right. So moving on, let's first discuss candidate safety. You know, these challenging times, the virus with the pandemic and everything that's happening, that's going on around us, this should be our main priority. Yes, kailangan natin mag-hire. Yes, we need to fill up positions. Yes, there's a huge market of unemployed workers out there, and if you're to look at it, this can be one of the best times to hire, depending on the positions that you'll be hiring for. But then again, if you'll be hiring, you need to consider the safety of your candidate. Put it this way, kunyari ikaw, may interview ka, would you want to go out and attend an interview? If you don't have your own car or if you don't have your own means of transportation, will you be willing to take the risk and go out and attend interviews for potential employees or for potential employers? If your answer is yes, then that's good. If your answer is pag-iisipan ko or I'm not sure, then your potential candidates might be thinking the same way. And so we'll be discussing on how do you prioritize the candidate safety. Right. So if you're going to invite a candidate for face-to-face interviews, say we fast forward, you already identified a candidate, maybe through JobStreet or through LinkedIn or through headhunting or through referrals or whatnot. If you're going to invite the candidate for a face-to-face interview, always consider his or her safety. First is probe if the candidate has means of transportation, and then if possible conduct online video calls as an alternative. We have a lot of online platforms that we can use in lieu of a face-to-face interview. We have Skype, we have Viber, which later on we'll be discussing more about it. But yeah, we always need to consider the safety of the candidate. So if you're going to invite the candidate for a face-to-face, check first. If you're already talking with the person, do you have transportation? May sasakyan ka ba? Or may maghahatid ba sa'yo going to the office? Or how will you get here? During the pandemic, when it broke out mid-March, we were actually hiring. We were hiring for 4 roles, five. We were hiring for 5 roles, and out of the five, we've already filled three. And then these three, two of them are based in Visayas and Mindanao. One is actually based in Cagayan de Oro, and then another one is based in Davao. And the third one is based in our office here in Parañaque. As Rona mentioned, I'm the HR manager for GRB Enterprises Inc. So we were hiring. We were hiring for an executive assistant for our team because during the pandemic, we cannot stop operations. Our business is considered essentials. We're into food safety. So tuloy-tuloy, our operations was ongoing. We're at 50% skeletal workforce, uh, making sure that we comply with the rules of Dole and IATF, but we cannot stop operation. And we were still hiring. Since we're on a skeletal workforce, mabigat yung operations for the ones who are reporting to work. So what we did is we were hiring for an executive assistant. So we utilized LinkedIn. We're a big fan of LinkedIn. We rarely post job ads. We don't heavily rely on job ads, so it's always headhunting. Even if it's for an executive assistant post, we tend to go to LinkedIn and to social media for our candidates. And so we started posting ads, Facebook pages, yeah, LinkedIn on my LinkedIn profile, and then referrals. So we were asking for referrals from our team. So we interviewed around 8 candidates all in all. So these are all phone interviews and video interviews. And then since we want to interview someone face to face before we provide a job offer, we needed to do that. So when we've identified our top three, I was on the phone. I was personally discussing with them. You know what, candidate one, we want to have a face-to-face interview with you in our office so we can further discuss the opportunity. You're actually shortlisted for the role. And I personally asked, may transportation ka ba? How will you go to the office if we want you to be, if we want to have a face-to-face interview? Those two candidates have their own means. They have yung isa is she's gonna be her dad is gonna drive her to the office. The other one, the guy has his own car. So okay lang, makakapunta naman sila. The third one, however, wala siyang transpo, pero she lives nearby the office. So we need to make sure that they're okay and they're comfortable going to the office for the face-to-face interview. So out of the 8 or 9 candidates, we funneled them down to the top three shortlisted, which we did. We invited for face-to-face interviews. Right. So always consider their safety. If they're okay, then sige, let's do a face-to-face interview. If they have transportation, then good, invite them in the office. If not, proceed with video calls or use online platforms to do so. In the event that you really need to do a face-to-face interview and wala silang transport, try considering potentially providing them with transportation. Maybe set up a common point and then have them picked up or something to that extent. Right, so moving on. So once you've already identified the candidate and then you're going to be inviting for a face-to-face interview, it's very important to practice safety protocols for a face-to-face interview. So what we did in our office is pagdating ni candidate, we need to check his or her temperature. If the temperature is above 37.5, hindi ka pwedeng pumasok. So you need to maybe if it's hot outside, kailangan mo na magpahinga and then we need to check again. Actually, the candidate that we hired, the first day, not really the first day, but so shortlisted na yung tatlo for face to face with our management. The lady that we hired, when she came in for the final interview, mataas yung temperature niya. She was at 38.2. So we needed to wait, and then we checked again, 38.2 and then 38 and then 37.9. Hindi talaga siya bumaba ng 37.5. So we had to tell her we cannot proceed because your temperature is such and such. Umuwi naman siya. This is the lady who lives near the office. So umuwi siya, and then the following day, I think it's her monthly period. So maybe that's the reason kung ba't ang taas ng temperature niya. Anyway, she went back to the office. Second time around, the temperature was okay. Before you get into our office, so we check your temperature, and then you need to wash your hands. We have a hand washing station in the office. So wash hands, soap, and then alcohol, and then check temperature. And then when she got in, our interview room has acetates. So we bought these acetates and we place it. So we need to sit at least a meter apart. But in our office, we're practicing at least 6 feet apart from each other. So we were in the meeting room. So it's a big desk. That's one of our meeting rooms. May acetate in the middle. So I sat on the other end, and then this is the acetate, and then the candidate was on the other end. And then I did the interview, and then afterwards the management came in. Our president and CEO interviewed her. Same setup. So we need to make sure that we're practicing uh, social distancing and we're practicing all the safety protocols necessary. So that's what happened with her. We ended up hiring her. For the other two, same procedure. So they have may transportation naman sila. They're okay to go to the office. So pagdating nila doon, they need to check temperature, they wash hands, and always wear a face mask. Even if it's during the interview, we actually, two of the three candidates asked if they can remove the face mask. We'd rather not. So we told them, no, it's okay, just keep your mask on. So we were conducting interviews ng face mask sila and kami. And then we were able to go about it. But the point is, if you're going to invite for a face-to-face interview, if you can provide transportation better, if not, consider nyo muna, is the candidate willing to go to your office? If so, then good. And then once the candidate gets to the office, make sure you practice the highest standards of safety when it comes to your interviews, face-to-face interviews in the office. Right. Moving on. So once you've considered already you know, once you've considered the safety of your candidate, you do face-to-face interviews and they're okay. Of course, before you conduct the hire, you'll do background check. And before we proceed with part of the background check is if you have a questionnaire about this, the COVID readiness questionnaire, that's also one of the best practices. So we need to make sure that the candidate has no history of being exposed to someone who's positive, or the candidate didn't have symptoms. Actually, when I was doing the slides, naisip ko nga parang, sana pala mas inuna namin to. Kasi di ba, what we're doing is, pag na-invite ko na for face-to-face, we're gonna check temperature, etc. But if you can switch it, if you can first have a questionnaire for for the COVID background, if the candidate has exposure, if the candidate showed symptoms, has cough, colds, fever, loss of taste, etc. If that's the case, then you move on. You don't proceed with conducting interviews or with inviting the candidate in the office. So, point is, if we want to make sure that we're practicing the highest safety standards when it comes to conducting talent acquisition during these pandemic. So the first is make sure that the candidates are okay to visit you in your office. If they have transportation, better. If not, maybe we can try to improvise. And then the next is consider their safety. Have a questionnaire if they have exposure with the virus or if they've shown symptoms in the past, and then act accordingly. And then, of course, safety protocols. Once the candidate is already in the office, make sure that we are practicing, the high standards of safety when it comes to social distancing, wearing face masks, etc. All right. So moving on is leveraging the use of technology. I'm sure you have Facebook. I mean, if you don't have Facebook, how would you know about this? If Rana did email blast, it means that you have emails. So nowadays almost everyone is tech savvy. At least you have an email or you have Facebook. You have a smartphone. These things will play a very big part right now because of what's happening, because of the pandemic, because of the virus. People are afraid to go out. Would really not let them go out and really leverage the use of technology. Right. So instead of face-to-face interviews, the first one is if we're going to do face-to-face interviews, practice the highest safety standards. But in the event that you'd rather be really safe and you'd really value the safety of your candidate and your employees' safety as well, and you want to limit exposure in the virus, it's best to do video calls. So what alternatives do we have? We have Skype, we have Google Hangouts or Google Meet, we have Microsoft Teams, we have Viber, we have FaceTime, we have StreamYard, we have a lot of online platforms already that we can utilize for face to face or for video calls. And maybe you're going to ask, yes, video calls are good, but you cannot express the nonverbal cues. That's very true. There's a lot of pros and cons in using technology or in conducting video calls. Actually, remember we were hiring for five, and we were able to hire three. The two of them are in, one is in CDO, one is in Davao. So for these candidates, obviously I'm based here in NCR, and they're based in Davao and CDO. We did thorough video calls. We actually have four rounds of interviews. The first one was with me, a phone interview, and then scheduled them for a video interview with myself. So I do two interviews, and then the third interview is with the hiring manager and our SVP for sales. So they do the interview simultaneously. And then if the candidate passes that, we have another interview with our management, our CEO, president and CEO, and one of the board of directors for GRB. So we're looking at four interviews, three of which are video calls. And before we provide the job offer, I'll be having another video call with the person. So during these video calls, we will be discussing everything that the person needs to know with the job, with our company, with the duties and responsibilities and the like. So kumbaga, we've discussed everything already in those video calls. And imagine having four, five different people conducting video interviews to the candidate. It means na medyo nasala na talaga namin yung candidate before we proceed with with coming up with the decision to hire. So kumbaga, we added uh, we, we added levels of interviewers. We want to make sure na apart from the HR, na-interview rin siya ng hiring manager and ng VP, SVP for sales, and then na-interview din siya ng management, the president and CEO, and the director. And then we reconvene, the five of us, we will discuss, oh, how's your feedback, ganyan. And then we come up with a decision. So we did that for all the candidates that we were interviewing in the Mindanao region. Since we cannot do face-to-face, we need to make sure that we leverage on technology. Yun lang, dumami yung process. But then again, uh, the candidate can take the call at home. There's no risk of going out and having acquiring the virus, etc. And also you secure yourself, or you don't open your office in you don't risk your office in someone coming from you know candidate going in, and who knows. During these times we need to be very, very careful of just make sure practice the highest level of safety standards. So there, leverage the use of technologies. So ideally you do phone interview, good, and then you do video interviews, video calls. If you need to do more than one, two, or three, we do whatever it takes, as long as we make sure that we properly screen the candidates. And of course, before you come up with a hiring decision, all stakeholders should be involved during the process. All right. So more of using technology or leveraging the use of technology. So this is what we've discussed earlier already. So it's best to utilize video calls, since generally speaking, everyone is afraid to go out. You know, there are even individuals who just stayed at home and still they acquire the virus. So medyo nakakatakot din talaga during these times. So if you can leverage video calls, even Facebook chat. Later on, we'll be discussing on we'll touch base a bit on hiring on social media. So yeah, best practices: utilize all possible online platforms to conduct video calls or video interviews. The other side of this is that if the candidate has limited internet connection, or if the candidate is already running on his mobile phone data or whatnot, then that's the part that we have to compromise. Right? So ideally, if we want to be doing video calls or video interviews, at least candidates should have a stable internet connection, para the call won't be dropping in and out. Right. So again, if we discuss about face to face, so in the event that the company or your management still really wants to conduct face to face, that's okay. But at least you can limit the visiting of the candidate to your office one time na lang. So kumbaga if you can process the candidate, do a lot of video calls, maybe two or three video calls before you invite them for a final interview, mas maganda. So once should you need to invite them for a face to face, at least shortlisted na, and it's just for the final interview. So they don't need to be going back to your office numerous times. Yeah, like the normal process. Right, and then more to the use of technology. This is what we started doing. I mean, since since we hired two candidates that are based, one in CDO, one in Davao, we have an, so to speak, online tour of the office. So we discussed with our IT, parang can we create like an online, it's similar to our company profile actually, create an online portfolio that shows everything and anything that the candidate needs to know about GRB. So that document contains pictures of the office, how where our office is, how the office looks like, the training rooms, where does where does everywhere sits, who sits where's your finance, where's your accounting, where's your HR, where's your operation. So we created a document. It's a PowerPoint presentation showcasing details about GRB. Since we cannot invite them yet, since we our practice is we fly candidates to our headquarters here in Parañaque, but since we want to prioritize safety, right now we created that. So it's like an online tour of the office. And then when we do orientation, it's also just online then. So kumbaga, before the candidate proceeds or before the candidate signs a job offer, or even once we've shortlisted the top three, we share them this document. So we share them our company profile. This is who GRB is. These are our employees. This is what we do. This is our office, warehouses, etc. But at least candidates have an idea now. You don't need to go out. You just click on the link and you can have idea of our company, our employees, etc., etc. So if you can do that, that's gonna be very helpful, so we can give more details or more information to the employees or to your potential hires or to your potential employees. Right, so moving on, so we've discussed how important the technology is and safety or best practices for conducting candidate safety, considering candidate safety as our top priority, and then we've discussed about leveraging online platforms. Now, this is very important. So even during, especially during these times, and even before the pandemic, it's always important to manage your candidates' expectations. Look at it this way. Tayo din applicants, eh, di ba? At some point, we are applicants and we want to be updated, right? So when we do our HR boot camp with Uprush, and then I would ask this question: who gives closure to their candidates, or who does not give closure to candidates? It's always more than half of the attendees hindi sila nagbibigay ng closure as to what happened to the candidates' application status. So managing candidates' expectations, this is always very important. Right, so provide and communicate as many details as possible to the candidate about the opportunity. So best practices in recruitment and talent acquisition as a whole. So once you've identified candidates already, and then you're progressing with potential interviews, initial interviews, our practices like this. Let me give you the picture of our process in recruitment in GRB. So my requisition, I have the job description. I will discuss with the hiring manager. So sabi ng job description mo, XYZ. And then your budget is this. And then we question, we collaborate, how do you do this, etc., etc. So after that, pag okay na, we proceed with recruitment, talent acquisition per se. So we do first shoulder tapping or referrals. Internal muna. Internal, we ask for potential referrals. If may referral or if may employee na gustong applyan yung position na yon, say from a salesperson, the salesperson wants to apply for a team lead position. We discuss everything about the role itself. Likewise, when we're hiring externally, we do the same. So we headhunt through LinkedIn, and then once we have LinkedIn, social media, Facebook, what have you, what platforms have you, we do headhunting. Once we've identified our top candidates, we normally start with around 5 to a maximum of 15. But these are candidates that we've thoroughly screened, so resume, etc. We've stalked, Facebook profile, Instagram, Twitter, etc. We've checked the social presence of the candidate, and we're confident that we want to progress. So we reach out to them, and then we call them. So if we have the phone details already, if we have a cell phone number, we call them. We discuss the opportunity, and then so we go like this. All right, Mr. Candidate, I got your profile on LinkedIn. By the way, this is TJ Pestaño from GRB. Is this a good time to talk? Right. So yeah, I have an opportunity for technical sales manager, and the person will be covering the Luzon area. We give full details. We give as much details as we can, and then afterwards we email the job description. And then after we email the job description, we also email the link to our website, to our Facebook, and our all of our social media platforms. So when you send that to the candidate if the candidate is a good candidate, research ka na niya. So the candidate is gonna check your website, your Facebook account, your Instagram, or what have you, all your online presence. The candidate would have done research already para pag nag-proceed na kami, after niyang mabasa yung job description and the candidate has understood a lot of details about us, at least may idea na siya na this is what you're getting into. So from there, we proceed. After sending the JD, we would wait for their reply if they're interested. If they're interested, then we proceed with the next steps of interview. So kumbaga, we give a lot of details, everything that the candidate, everything that you can afford to share to the candidate about their company. It's best if you provide that para at least lahat sila they already they're already aware, they already have an idea of what they're getting into. Right. So moving forward, of course, it's always important to communicate. Communicate. It's okay if you over communicate rather than you fall short on communicating. Mas maganda na yung talagang ina-update natin sila with their application. So the things that you need to communicate when managing your candidate's expectation is, of course, is first the timeline. So how many interviews are we looking at? Right? So candidate, we're looking at maybe 3, 4 interviews in the whole process. You'll be interviewed by HR, and then by the hiring manager, and then by the head of department, and then by the president. So if you can share timelines, it's best if you manage expectations early on. So you can go like the whole interview process, Mr. Candidate, will take us about 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, ito yung mga magiging interviews. Right? So you can manage expectations. You can tell them, so this is the initial interview. And then the hiring manager, if you pass, the the head of department will conduct another interview. If you pass the head of department, you'll be interviewed by the president, something to that extent. So always manage expectations. Provide the timeline and then how many interviews will the person be undergoing. And then, of course, after you provide the timeline, you also need to inform the candidate kung sino, right? So who's going to conduct the interview, what's the name, what's the position. So what I personally do is after we manage yung expectations na nila, the next email is, all right, so congratulations, Mr. Candidate. You passed the interview with the hiring manager. The next interview is with the head of department. This is the person's name. This is the position in the company. And this is the LinkedIn profile. So we're very transparent dun sa process namin. And we share these details to the candidate para alam din niya, who's the person, what type of interview, etc., etc. And so the timeline for interviews, who will be the interviewers, and then of course how many interviews will there be, and then kung merong assessment and other important details. So the assessment, usually this is on a case-to-case basis. Depends on the role that you're hiring for. Usually if it's an IT position, Laging meron. There's a technical assessment, coding, practical, etc. So the five headcount that we're hiring for, we've hired the three. So we've hired the EA and then the two sales. We're hiring for a junior full stack developer, and we're also hiring for another sales. The junior full stack, it's still ongoing. One of the challenges kasi that we're encountering right now is, whilst there are a lot of candidates who are who are unemployed since because of the pandemic, company closure, etc. The ones that are still in employment, they tend not to explore. Why? Because of security. Uh, every time I speak to candidates, I would discuss the opportunity. I will send the job description, and then pag initial interview na, sasabihin ni candidate, sir, thank you for the opportunity, pero parang I'd have to pass for now kasi okay naman yung work ko, stable naman yung company. And then since it's the pandemic, kumbaga they don't want to take the risk of leaving their current stable job to join another company, which, even if they've done research with, hindi naman sila sigurado kung gaano ka stable, or what's the company about? Will the company be sustainable for the next 5 years, etc. So yung mga may work ngayon, they tend not to leave the company because of stability. Kumbaga, if your company weathered through the pandemic and you're still in operations, that's a good sign. And employees value that. And then because of that, they became more loyal. The other side is maraming unemployed. If we're looking at the hospitality industry, hotel hospitality, blue collar jobs, madami. You imagine hotels, restaurants, even factories, production workers. There are a lot of these profiles in the market, mainly because of their company shutting down. So it depends on the position that you're hiring. Kung IT, it's not gonna be easy kasi IT guys can work from home. If you're hiring for sales, depends on which industry. May mga industry na medyo nag-downsize, so it can be good. But then again, it's a case-to-case basis. Depending kung anong industry yung hire mo or kung anong position, it can be easy or it can be challenging. Kumbaga ngayon walang gray, there's no gray line to separate na okay lang yung recruitment. It's either it's really easy because there's a lot of profiles, or it's really hard because these profiles are not actively looking. So, you know, going back, so really managing expectations. If you're speaking with candidates na, be very transparent. And then if you're gonna be encountering these challenges at some point, that's actually okay. But as long as you manage expectations, you're open and upfront with them. Hopefully, they do the same to you. They can tell you what's really happening. If they're really exploring, or if they're not, then you just have to deal with it and compromise. Move on with the next. Right. So more to managing candidates' expectations. So again, I'm a big fan of this. Always provide closure to interviewed candidates. What happened during the interview? Bakit sila hindi pumasa? And if you can, provide takeaways. So what I've personally been doing, I've been in the headhunting industry, executive search, candidate management for quite a lengthy, considerable amount of time. We manage expectations and we provide takeaways. So we make sure na pag na-interview na namin, and then how many 2, 3 days or maybe a week after, and then di sila nagustuhan ng candidate, we tell it to them. We tell, not candidate, but the client rather. So we tell them that this is what happened during the interview. These are your strong points. These are your weak points. Maybe next time this is what you can do better. So kumbaga, we're we tell them what happened, and then we give them potential takeaways or tips, so to speak, kung paano mo gagalingan sa mga susunod na interviews. So it's, talent acquisition, it's not, we don't treat our candidates as numbers. So they're humans, and you treat your candidates the way you want to be treated. So always provide closure to your interviewed candidates. You tell them what happened during their interview. reason why did they not pass, and takeaways. So the takeaways, even now with GRB, so I've been with GRB for I think 9 or 10 months. This is my first stint as a full blown HR manager and business partner. I still practice the takeaways. Dun sa mga hindi pumasa, I tell them what happened. Like with the EA, the two other candidates, the first one, he was really good. However, yung background niya is really not into logistics. Although he had a good background in logistics, when we were probing na more detailed questions about his understanding in the logistics industry, medyo hindi na siya nakaka-catch up. So after that, uh, the day after, I called him and then I was explaining to him na ganito yung nangyari. And likewise with the other lady, she was taking law. So she really outstanding profile. Pero yun, she's taking online classes, and her online classes starts at 5 and it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. At first, we thought, okay to kasi, kumbaga she's aggressive. She wants to learn a lot of things. She wants to be a lawyer at some point. So, challenge is, nung tinanong namin siya, say you have an exam, how do you plan to go about it? Tapos medyo hindi namin nagustuhan yung sagot. So we tell them that, and we tell them what happened, and we provide closure. Even if it takes you 1 month, just make sure na, well, ideally, huwag siyang patagalin ng ganun, pero provide closure, even if through to a simple text message or an email, a phone call. It's always best to provide closure. Put it this way, kung ikaw yung nag-apply, tapos hindi ka binigyan ng feedback, how would you feel? So we treat candidates the way we want to be treated. All right. Final thoughts. So yeah, I mean, during these times, if you have a job, be thankful. You know, at least 2 or 3 million Filipinos have lost their jobs. So if you have a job, be thankful and do your best with your job and do good. You're very lucky to be having a job right now, and with that, you should really do your best and help your company during these challenging times. Next is headhunting during these challenging times. Really different extremes. If you're hiring for blue collar jobs, madami. You can just post an ad in job street. I'm sure marami na mag-apply, or if you post an ad, through online job boards or what have you. Depending on the position, there are, again, we have at least a couple of million unemployed workers out there. So this can potentially be a good time to hire, depending on the position that you're looking to fill. And on the other side is, if you're hiring for certain roles like IT, or you know operations, or the BPO, it might be a bit challenging because the ones that are in employment, they wouldn't want to leave their company since they were able to weather the pandemic. So it's very tricky on those two aspects. And the third, of course, if your organization is hiring, do your best to find the right candidate for the job. Be aggressive in conducting talent acquisition. Again, there are a lot of candidates in the market. We need to continuously evolve, continuously change our approach in talent acquisition. If you're to look at it before the pandemic, well, let's be very honest, hindi naman talaga madaling mag-recruit. Pero mas naging challenging siya nung pandemic. And naging pahirapan pang mag-interview. That, I mean, even before, di ba, it's a bit challenging to, depends on the position that you hire, but let's face it, show rate, yung na-invite mo, tas pupunta sa office, before the pandemic, mahirap yun. What more pa na nag-pandemic? Diba? So, during these times, we need to be very, very aggressive. If your company is hiring, be very aggressive in conducting talent acquisition. If you can build a talent pool, that's even better. Once they've applied, you put their resume and your resume bank, and you continuously build your candidate database. Yeah, so these are actually the things that we want to discuss for this afternoon. So We were hoping to cover candidate safety as our top priority, which we did, then leverage the use of technology, and then managing candidates' expectations. In If we are going to practice these three things and always safety as a top priority, talent acquisition is challenging. It's not easy, but with the right attitude and with the right mindset, it's doable. We just need to keep on pushing and we just need to keep doing our best. And so
Yeah.
we'll be opening the floor for questions and answers.
Yeah, I agree, TJ. Actually, I like the last part that you mentioned about hiring the right candidate. Earlier, this morning, I actually I did a talk for Up app, and one of the things that I mentioned there was that for the new normal, for us to be successful. To the new normal, in facing the new normal, we have to make sure that we hire the right candidates right now. Okay, so hindi na natin because the thing is people think that we are in the new normal. This is not yet the new normal. This is just a transition phase.
We're
The new
getting there
normal
to the new
is,
normal.
yeah, we're getting to the new normal. The new normal is when we actually we're okay now. We can go back to work. We don't have to worry about the COVID. That's the new normal. But right now, the transition phase is more of a training ground for us to be equipped in facing the new normal. Kasi pagdating kay new normal, the things that we are used to prior to COVID, these things will no longer hold.
Yep.
Hindi na to magiging applicable kasi the behavior of your, let's say, of your talent pool magbabago yan eh. In the past, uso pa yung pupunta lang sa mag-walk-in, sa mga offices to apply. With what happened with the pandemic, I think things will be different. And people will no longer be, they might not be willing to just walk in. They
Yep.
might be more demanding din also. So, kung dati ang mga questions lang ng mga applicants is, kailan ako pwedeng mag-start, magkano yung salary. I think right now, the trend will be changing. Yung mga applicants natin, yung talent
Yes.
pool natin, will now be looking for more than just compensation and more than just kailan ako mag-start. They will be more focused on how do you handle situations like this. How did your company handle the COVID pandemic? How did your company take care of its employees? Magiging mas demanding na mga applicants ngayon and discerning, and we have to, as recruitment persons, as talent acquisition professionals, we have to have an ear on the ground to know kung paano tayo makaka-adapt doon and ano yung mga changes na kailangan natin gawin para ma-ensure natin na makaka-adapt tayo.
Yep. Very true. Actually, on the candidates that we've interviewed for the series, even yung sa CDO and sa Davao, I was surprised kasi yung EA, even the EA position, yung yung shortlist namin for final interviews, yung tatlo na pumunta sa office, two of them actually asked, right, so when turn na nila, di ba? So do you have any questions for us? Yung isa nagtanong siya, sabi niya, Sir, what have you done during the pandemic? Ooh. So, right. And then, sir, what were your policies during the pandemic? How were you able to help the employees? Parang, wow, okay. So, ganun na yung mangyayari. Candidates, everyone is evolving, so candidates will be more demanding. That's very true. When the lady asked, buti na lang what we've done as a company naman is I'm very glad and very happy and privileged to be part of the team. Kasi when I created policies on how to address the COVID, okay. I mean, almost lahat actually na-approve. Walang hindi na-approve. So we provided 30% hazard pay for the employees who are actually reporting for work. So that's good, the
Wow.
30%. And then yung mga pumapasok, apart from the 30%, we provide transportation. So sinusundo talaga namin sila sa mga bahay nila. And then we provide fringe benefits, vitamins, free lunch, ganyan. Kasi you slash your workforce 50% eh. So kumbaga, kumonti yung tao sa office. Tapos yung mga pumapasok, nakita mo yung dedication talaga nila. So we provide 30% free vitamins, yung transportation, yung lunch, and then we provide, of course, face mask, alcohol, etc. So when the candidate asked that, natuwa ako kasi sinagot ko talaga siya na, ito yung ginawa namin. Ganyan. Tapos sabi niya, natawa na lang ako dun sa sagot niya. Sabi niya, Sir, sana all. Right? Okay.
Yeah, because not all of the companies are providing that. I am quite surprised that you are providing hazard pay. Is that correct? Did I hear
Yep,
that right?
yep, yep.
Kasi
Although we
not
stopped,
all
yeah,
companies provide that.
yeah. By law, it's not required kasi hindi naman
Mm-hmm.
talaga. Pero we provided the hazard pay kasi yung logistics team namin, they compose almost half of our company. So these are drivers, helpers. Talagang exposed sila kasi they go to clients eh. Kumbaga, hindi mo walang assurance kung saan nila makukuha or what not. So yun, we provide 30% hanggang nung nag-MCQ. So after na nung GCQ, nung nag-June, parang medyo umokay naman na, madami nang pumapasok. So sabi ko dun sa mga boys namin, at saka bumaba rin kasi yung sales namin. Lahat naman bumaba, di ba? So at least during the hype nung pandemic, nakapag-provide kami ng something to our logistics team na binalik naman nila na, ano yun, loyalty and all. They weren't giving up. Talagang pasok sila every other day, ganyan. So yeah, it worked out well. Except lang ngayon, kasi since dumadami yung cases, parang konting symptoms lang, we do quarantine agad eh. And then we created the policy na lang, yung sick leave namin, if it's COVID suspected, if you're a suspected COVID case, we cover the sick leave. So, kumbaga, in-extend na lang din namin. So,
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. Kami, in the previous company that I've worked with, I think what worked for us was that even before the announcement for the ECQ was made, our boss was actually getting everyone to consider working from home. Yung ibang mga hindi naman ganoon kakailangan sa office, sinabihan na kagad na go home, stay at home, doon na kayo magtrabaho before, even before nagkaroon ng ng ECQ na prepare na kagad. I think it also pays that the top management is talagang they anticipate kung ano yung
yep,
mangyayari. I think it helps to ensure na yun nga operations will still run smoothly. And I think that trusting also your employees to do their job even if they're working from home, it also helps. Especially dito sa ganitong sitwasyon. It's no longer actually part of recruitment, but if you trust your employees to do good, even if they are not you're not supervising them, I think they would appreciate that and really stick with the company. It might be a challenge nga lang for recruitment personnel kasi mas mahihirapan kayo
yep,
ngayon na
yep,
mag-entice talaga ng mga applicants to transfer. But we have a large pool right now, depending on what position you're looking for. But we have a large pool. There are a lot of companies that have closed down or have let go of their employees. I think for those na they know of their competitors na nahihirapan, I think it might be a good idea to get in touch with them, and you might be able to help them i-transfer yung mga employees nila na they have to let go. So it also works na meron kayong network para makatulong sa
yep,
inyo
yep.
in recruitment.
Correct,
So
correct.
yun.
Especially in the industry. Kumbaga, sa in like kunyari sa mga IT companies, they know kung sino yung medyo palagi na eh. So what they're doing
Mm-mm.
is, kung effective talaga yung HR, ibabato na niya yung pool niya dun sa okay pa na, okay, mag-redundant ako, meron akong ganitong team, o gusto mo ba, pwede ba dun sa inyo? So, in a way, it's
Mm-mm.
also helping your employees kung mawawala na nga sila.
Yes. Yes. So if yung mga kasama natin dito na mga HR, if you haven't seen the movie Up in the Air, please watch it. It's
Yeah,
about
yeah.
outplacing employees na redundant. So you might want to watch that one. So before we proceed po, let me just invite everyone. So this is a it's a good discussion. It's a very fruitful webinar. But if you want to know more about talent acquisition, and if you want to know more about the different methods of on how you can do talent acquisition, we would like to invite you to be part of the HR Bootcamp Batch 13. This is happening on October 16 and 17. So nasa batch 13 na po tayo. Aside from talent acquisition, you would also be learning about compensation and benefits, learning and development, as well as labor relations and employee discipline. So if you're interested po, you can head to the link here, or you can also use, if meron po kayong pambasa ng QR code, you can actually use that to register. Just get a snapshot, or just use your QR code reader para po mabasa tong QR code na yan. It will take you directly to the registration sheet po. So po pwede nyo pong gamitin yan. So ayan po, dun sa mga gusto pong mag-register, pwede nyo pong gamitin yan right now. Okay?
13 HR bootcamp out.
Yes, 13th HR Bootcamp and third online session. Ito po yung ika-third natin. And we've taken from the feedback from the previous attendees, we've taken some of their suggestions on how we can do the online bootcamp better. So may mga changes po yan. Ito pong ating batch 13, medyo iba po ang magiging style natin ng presentation. So if you would like to attend, ayan po ang ating registration details po. Diyan po kayo pupunta. Okay? And then po, we still have we still have 5 more sessions for the month of, 4 more sessions for the month of August. So if you want to have your brand featured po, so makikita nyo po dyan po sa baba. Kung gusto nyo pong ma-place yung inyo pong brand dyan po sa baba, tulad po ng sa Social Geekers, Wikileaks, and Move Up, just let us know po. These are the packages that we have. If you're interested, let us know. You can send us an email para po ma-feature namin po ang inyo pong companies. We have a free package. We also have paid packages. So yung free package po natin, yun po yung ating bronze package. You can have your company featured po dito. And then we'll also include your logos, and we would mention your brand during the event. I-email blast po namin ang inyo pong logo to all our email or newsletter subscribers. So yun po if interested po kayo. Okay po. And then of course, mananawagan lang po tayo. May mga nakisuyo po sa atin ng mga kaibigan na medyo they are experiencing some challenging times right now. So one of a dear friend, his son is actually diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He is a very bright boy, very, very energetic boy, dreams of becoming a pilot someday. His dad used to be a flight attendant. So if you would want to send in your help, these are the details po. Andyan po. You can send it via BPI, Metrobank, PNB, GCash, and Paymaya. For those who are asking, you would get a copy of the video. Ito pong video natin ngayon. You would get a copy of that. You would also get a copy of the slides. So i-include po natin dito in case po na gusto nyo pong tumulong, to donate, or anything po, or even if you just want to send a message of encouragement to Andre, lalagay po natin yan lahat sa slides para po kayo po ay makapagbigay sa kanya ng saya. And also, if you've watched our Monday edition of Help, I'm New to HR, one of our panelists, her dad was actually in ICU right now at Maddox. If you would want to help our fellow HR, her name is Monica Nalda. These are the details. You can send po any donation po via GCash, or you can send words of encouragement. Kailangan po niyan ngayon kasi sinugod po yung daddy niya just the other day. So if you would want to help fellow HR, ito po yung mga details para po makapagbigay po kayo ng kahit na konting tulong sa kanya. Okay po. For more webinars, you can visit our page, both paid and free po. So paano nyo malalaman kung free webinar? May nakalagay po yun usually, free webinar. Kung gusto nyo po yung mga free webinar, pwede po kayong mag-subscribe doon. Kung gusto nyo po yung mga paid versions usually take anywhere from 3 hours to a whole day. So depende po sa topic. We have a lot of those coming up. So the nearest one is our labor relations and labor cases webinar. This is an 8-hour, this is a 6 to 7 hour session about labor relations and labor cases. We would be discussing disciplinary action, labor compliance, and things like that. If you would want to register po, just capture the QR the QR code that we have here right now, or you can head to the link that we have here. Okay. So I think we have a few questions that we would need to address. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Our first question is from Brenda. Brenda is actually one of our masugid na attendee sa mga trainings natin. So she would want to know if you can find the candidate's Facebook profile because they use a different name or they really have none but they have a LinkedIn profile. Do you still ask for their Facebook profile? Ano po masasabi mo, Kuya TG?
We don't technically ask, pero as recruiters, we stalk. So if you know how to do a wildcard search sa Google lang, you put two asterisks and then you put the whole name of the person and then you just hit enter. Pwede yun. Although we don't ask talaga, oh, what's your Facebook, ganyan. Hindi. Usually, yung LinkedIn is enough. Pero yun, we do a lot of stalking. Hinahanap din talaga namin siya. And then, pag nakita na namin, edi good. Pag hindi, edi okay lang din. Pero we don't ask. I would, kasi kumbaga Facebook is personal na yun eh. LinkedIn is corporate, that's okay. Siguro depending on the position that you're hiring. Pero generally speaking, sa culture natin, lahat naman Facebook user. I think it's okay. Pero ako personally, hindi ko tinatanong. Here in our company, I was surprised kasi GRB is a locally run company. All Philippine. The owners are Filipinos. Although they've lived abroad, majority of all of the staffs, all of the employees are Filipinos. So medyo iba yung culture. Kasi where I came from, the owners were Australians and we were working with different nationals. So sa kanila, yung Facebook, one whole year bago kami naging Facebook friends. Kasi they respect that. Personal mo yan eh. So after 1 year na we worked together, ayun, mga Facebook friends na kami. Dito with our current company, in the first 2 weeks, inad na ako ng mga katrabaho ko. So as local, culture natin yun eh. So in-accept ko sa sila, etc. Ganyan. It depends on the practices of your company. If kay Jeremy kasi, normal siya. Normal siya na pag na-hire, tinitignan agad nila yung Facebook. So on that front, ang ginagawa ko is yung mga hina-hire ko, hindi ko hinihingi ng Facebook, pero nire-research ko pa rin. I do the wildcard search, ganyan. Siguro it depends eh. You need to gauge then the person or you need to check your company's practices. Pero I personally wouldn't recommend it. But in our company, it's okay. People will, yung mga tao doon, during interviews nila, ano Facebook mo? Okay, they ask. They ask na like it's, hindi siya big deal. Hindi siya big deal. So yeah, it depends on the company's culture. I personally, I don't ask personally that question to the candidates, pero in the office and in other companies, I think ginagawa nila yun. So I think it's a local culture thing. It's okay. Depends on your policies and depends on your practices. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, sorry.
Yeah.
So meron po tayong phone-in question. Eto po, given the current situation, how do we ensure that we are making the right hire as it is hard to read non-verbal body language pag sa ano daw. I think this one's referring to if they're doing interviews online via Skype. How do you ensure that you're making the right hire?
On our end, so our practice is dinamihan namin yung video interviews. So usually, when I started, we were able to hire five na. So when I started November, we were able to hire five. Yung dalawa doon is before the pandemic, so talagang face-to-face, the usual. Yung three that we've hired within the past 2 months, dinagdagan namin yung video interviews. Instead of just me doing the interview, the hiring manager, the SVP for sales or the head of department, and then the president and CEO. So after me, may tatlo pa. And then after that, sa akin ulit. So kumbaga we we've added steps in really thoroughly screening and interviewing the candidate. So yung video interview ko would normally last an hour. The video interview with the hiring manager and the head of department, ito mas mahaba kasi they ask all the technical stuff na ganyan. And then the interview with the president and CEO is about an hour then. And then after that, ako ulit. So kumbaga yung funneling, yung screening process namin humaba, pero at least ano, parang kumbaga it's a vote eh. Pag umokay sa akin, dun sa hiring manager sa head of department, pag umokay sa kanya, balik dun sa, proceed dun sa president, tapos ako ulit. Tapos magmi-meet kami ulit. Magmi-meet kami, oh, okay, kamusta yung feedback, ganyan. So we've added, imagine, we have total of 4 interviews. Ako, dalawa presidents, ako ulit, five interviews. Dinagdagan namin sa showing na ma-filter talaga namin. Even if we don't see the non-verbal cues, etc. Pero spending that amount of time with the candidate, for us, okay na kami doon. We interview them for maximum of 5 times, and then we discuss and we decide whether to proceed with hire or not. Of course, syempre, we also do background checks.
And I think it's also important that one has an idea of how to do behavioral interviews. Napaka-importante
Yep.
ng knowing, especially the STAR method, na knowing how to do behavioral interviews para kahit na you're interviewing across a screen, hindi ka ganun ka dependent masyado on non-verbal language. I think it also helps that you know that.
Yep, I agree. Sorry. That's, parang sa akin kasi it's pretty much automatic na ginagawa. If you've been doing interviews for a
Mm-mm.
long period of time, kumbaga, norm automatic na yun eh. Pero yeah, to answer yung question, it's a bit challenging, pero if you can maybe magdagdag ka ng screening pa. Dati kung dalawa or tatlong tao lang, makakapag-decide ka na kumuha ka pa ng isa. Or siguro yung HR officer mo, tapos yung HR manager mo, tapos yung hiring manager mo, tapos head of department. I mean, what I'm trying to say is add more people in the process para more ideas. And then you brainstorm and then you decide. Pero of course, manage mo rin yung expectations ni candidate.
Yes, correct, correct. So our next question is from Miss Lean. How to make the whole talent acquisition engaging, knowing that all processes are mostly online, including the onboarding. Do you have any tips about this?
How to make it engaging? So what we're doing is, yun nga, we show all our social media presence. If you have time, you can look us on Facebook, JRB Enterprises. So we, over the years, the company has also built their Facebook page, Facebook and may Instagram. And then what we do is, pag send ko ng job description, kasama na nun yung website, Facebook page, ganyan. So kumbaga we're showing to the candidates kung ano talaga at sino talaga kami. Yung, my workmates, they're very social media savvy. Nagpo-post sila doon. And we use a hashtag GRB Enterprises Inc. So pag sinasend namin yun sa mga candidates, na-entice sila. Pag nakita nila yung Facebook page, ay, ito si GRB. Ay, nag-Christmas party sila sa ganito. Ay, ganito yung mga ginagawa nila. So that alone, it becomes parang nagiging ina-attract namin sila. And then what more is what we did during the pandemic, the owners, we had a fundraising. We were able to raise more than 1 million, and then we donated it. Ako mismo, I would load goods in our trucks, and then I would go out and hand it over to people who need it the most. So pinost din namin yun. Naka-upload yun sa website, naka-upload yun sa Facebook page, ganyan. So naging engaging yung online presence namin. Pero pag tinignan mo yung website namin, actually, it's okay. It's not wow. Pero okay siya. It serves the purpose of having a website. Nandun yung products namin. But it's more of our social media. So talagang ini-engage namin sila. Pag sinend namin yung job description, isend ko yung Facebook link. Talagang nakaka-attract din eh. And then we keep them updated. I personally keep them posted. Pag tinawagan ko yung first call, and then constant communication through text, email. And then we make sure na, kasi kumbaga we're like marketing eh. Parang
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
tayo yung nagma-market ng kumpanya natin eh. The very first interaction nung candidate sa kumpanya mo, it's gonna say a lot. So kung kaya mong
Correct,
i-sustain,
correct.
kung gaano ka I would use the term hardcore eh, pero kung gaano ka kagaling nung unang touch base mo sa kanya, tuloy-tuloy mo yun hanggang sa matapos yung process. Para yung energy, yung interest niya, tuloy-tuloy. Imagine if you're gonna sound boring or, alam mo yun, parang tatatak na doon sa isip ni candidate na, ay, ano ba naman yan? So, our job is very important. Kung gaano tayo ka-engaging sa simula, dapat consistent. Tapos yan, constant open communications, follow-up message, email, ganyan. That's what we're doing. And then we share details about us nga Facebook, company website, company portfolio, we share them to the candidates. So that's, for us, it's been working. And yeah, I'm not saying you should do the same, but maybe you can try. Palakasin nyo din yung uh, social media presence nyo. And then if you can
Mm-mm.
encourage your employees na mag-post about your company, mas maganda.
Mm. And I think it's also important that you review yung inyong applicant experience. So focus on the
Yep,
experience. I-check nyo, review how your applicants feel about the whole experience of applying to your job. So dapat naiintindihan nyo yung pagta-transfer from one interviewer to the next, paano yung nagiging transition, okay ba sila, may questions ba, meron bang hindi na clear. Yung mga kailangan natin intindihan. It's not something, there is no hard and fast rule on how the whole experience should be, but put yourself in the shoes of your applicant. If you want them to have a very good experience, whether you hire them or not, if you want them to have a very good experience, checking nyo saan ba kayo nagkakaroon ng problema. Ask your applicants feedback about the whole process para alam nyo kung ano yung kailangan nyo i-improve. Huwag kayo matakot na humingi ng feedback from your applicants. Kasi even your applicants na if-fail nyo, if they are happy with the whole process, magiging ambassador nyo yan eh. They will tell you things, they will tell applicants things about how you handle them even if nag-fail sila. So it's very important that you focus on the experience rather than on anong tulang ginamit, gaano kabilis, kung pumasa or hindi. Focus on the experience that you're willing to provide them.
correct, correct. Candid experience, yun talaga yung nagmamatter kasi even if you don't end up hiring them, if maganda yung naging experience, word
Mm-mm.
of mouth na yun. Word of mouth na yun na, oh, hindi ako na-hire pero maganda yung process nila, ganyan, ganyan,
Oo.
ganyan.
So from Sarah Canicoso, she's asking, how about the HR examination for the applicants? Do you also conduct it online?
Yes, for the IT role, yes, we are conducting it online. Two things though. Yung isang assessment namin is on a controlled environment. Like it's a software and we can monitor everything that's happening within that software. The other exam is supposedly pen and paper. That we cannot control. Kasi kung sa office namin gagawin yun, kumbaga we're checking for your stock knowledge in programming and coding. So ang ginawa namin ngayon is it's a timed assessment. So ganun din, we're gonna give you 2 hours from the moment that we've sent this email at na-receive mo, dapat within 2 hours masend mo sa amin na may sagot. So what happened is, the ones who took the assessment, madali mo naman malaman kung ginugol yung sagot, which is true enough, ginugol talaga nila. Pero we follow it up with technical interview. It's a bit tricky depending on what type of assessment. Kasi for developers, mas maganda may controlled environment na similar to GitHub na parang lahat na record kung ano yung ginagawa. If you can get that, okay. If it's expensive, then you have to make do with what you have. Kung meron lang kayo is yung typical na pen and paper, maybe convert it to a Word format, send it to the candidate, and then just time it. And then pag nakuha mo na yung sagot, you interview them using yung assessment. Parang i-check mo kung tama ba yung sagot nila or whatnot. But then again, iba talaga yung exam pag nasa office na pen and paper kasi mamomonitor mo nga. Whereas compared sa bahay, kasi with at home, they can Google, they can consult whoever, or they can do whatever, and then just give you the right answers. Maybe tell our candidates that honesty is the best policy, and if you can answer this certain assessment within certain period of time, we would appreciate it. I mean, end of day, ma, ma it's important to have an assessment, pero you also need to validate that. And of course, yung interview process pa rin and involving stakeholders, importante pa rin. So kumbaga, one part is the assessment, that's important. Pero don't heavily rely on it, especially during these times na pwedeng ang sagutin nila yan at home using whatever resources
Mm-mm.
they have.
But if you have the budget, I would suggest that if you have the budget, there are a lot of online assessment tools that you might want to consider if you have the budget. If the company does not have the budget, um, we just need to make sure na yung ating interview process would be able to see if they're really if they were the ones who really answered the question. So yung hindi po pwedeng assessment lang, tulad nga nasabi ni TJ, hindi po pwedeng assessment lang. There should also be the interview process. Dapat yung sagot on both process or steps dapat nagtutugma. So yun. And then our next question po, would you prefer candidates to dress up for online interviews? Or would you take it against them? I think yun yung question. Would you take it against them?
I mean, if you do online interviews, you only need to see the, like, ito lang pataas eh. Eh, Di ba? Parang you would, natawa ako. Kasi like, I mean, I work from home, right? I would only need to go to the office siguro once or twice or if kailangan lang, pag may meeting, whatnot. Pareho kami ng comment ng mga co-managers ko na pag tinignan mo yung ito going up, okay eh. Huwag mo nang tingnan yung buong suot. Kasi who knows if you're working on your on your bedroom tapos naka-boxer shorts ka lang or we don't hold it against it. Pero importante yung nakikita namin. So when I do face-to-face, ito dapat okay. Diba? I mean, a good decent blouse or collared shirt or whatnot, smart casual. Although I don't mention it na through my emails kasi I take na kumbaga mag-video call ka eh. So I assume that you would look presentable in a video call. I mean, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
presenting yourself wearing sando or wearing a, butas-butas aircon shirt or yeah. Smart casual. If you have to just reiterate and include it on your email na please be in your smart casual attire, something like that. But yeah, I think it's almost automatic eh. Pero kung mag-show up man yung candidate mo na hindi presentable, I would take it against him na ba't ka mag-video call tapos nakasando ka lang?
No, parang ano, it lacks sincerity on their end na
Yeah,
ibenta yung sarili nila for the position. Yeah,
effort. Like you're gonna have a video interview. Would you wear sando? If
correct.
needed, you need to put it in your email na lang din. I mean, if you want to be sure, you can include it in your email and communicating with them that they need to be smart, casual, or presentable.
Oh, you mentioned nga kanina, di ba? It's much better to over-communicate. So, much better na ilagay na
Yep.
kagad doon sa email that we're expecting you to be in smart casual or business attire, things like that. So,
Yep.
our next question is, what if the hiring process requires exam? What could be the possible safest way to do it po?
Kasi if the exam is confidential, so yung yung nire-recruit namin ngayon na IT, actually yung IT lang yung may exam and then yung the rest, yung sales ganyan, we interview it, like really behavioral interviews and then the hiring manager and the head of department, they've been with the company for more than 15 years, so they really can gauge candidates, fit or not. Siguro if confidential yung exam, I would rather have the person go sa office na lang. If it's proprietary, if it's, if your company did that and it's really copyrighted or what have you, I would consider inviting na lang the person in the office. Kasi if not, there's a chance na pag in-email, even if your email signature says on the bottom part that this email is only intended for the recipient, etc., there's no guarantee that your material will not go out. Or there's no guarantee na kay candidate lang talaga yan. It's not that we're doubting candidates, but you would rather play it safe. So if your exam is really highly confidential or if it's proprietary, I'd rather invite the candidate na lang sa office para doon siya mag-exam. But if it's, if it's a controlled environment, kunyari nga, pag IT, ganyan, there are online platforms that you have to subscribe and then they need to take the assessment online. Madali lang yun, monitor mo. Pero if it's pen and paper and if it's proprietary, invite nyo na lang sa office. And then just
And
explain
just,
to them. Yep. Yeah,
sorry.
explain it to them na lang. Tell them that this is, it's a confidential exam. You have to be in the office. Can you come here? You know.
And just make sure na lang na, for example, proprietary exams and you need to do it in the office, just make sure that you schedule it correctly kasi you can't have too many people naman
Right.
inside the office. There are still guidelines on how many people should be inside the office. So you just need to make sure that you schedule it correctly, huwag pagsabay-sabayin, At least kung mass hiring kayo, just keep it to 25% of those people, yun lang yung idadalhin nyo. Or do ano na kagad, do initial screening na kagad para hindi naman lahat papupuntahin nyo sa office para pa dun sa assessment.
Yep. Otherwise, if you're really, if kasi there are positions that really requires like assessments, yun, just
Mhm.
consider practice, safety protocols. Kung dati 100 people yung kaya mong pa-exam sa isang araw, gawin mong 50 na lang or, make sure you're practicing the highest safety standards.
How do you ensure confidentiality in online examinations?
I
I
think we,
think I think
yeah,
this is
I think,
more on ano eh. This is more on dun sa provider na mismo eh.
yep, yep,
Um we have the Data Privacy Act in place naman, and all of those that all parties or vendors who are collecting information are required to adhere to that. So if you're making use of a third party vendor, then this vendor should take care of making sure that the information being shared by the applicants are kept confidential. But if you are the one administering, let's say you created an exam and you made an online version of it, and you would want to administer it to an applicant who's taking it from his or her home, I think you still have to familiarize yourself with the Data Privacy Act and make sure that you have disclaimers in place, just so the applicants know, or they are aware of where and how their information will be used. Ang pinakamatindi or pinakamabigat lang naman na dapat tandaan when it comes to data privacy is that the examinee should be aware of how you're going to handle the information, and kung ano man yung sinabi nyo na paggagamitan ng information, dun lang siya talaga gagamitin. So yun, and that the examinee at some point, if ever they would want to request that their records be removed, dapat meron kayong kakayahan na i-remove yung information na yun. So
yep,
yun lang
correct.
muna. Mm.
Agree on that, the waiver, and if you can have them sign a non-disclosure agreement or waiver, that's very helpful. And then indicate na lang doon na, this exam is, uh, it's proprietary and we would appreciate blah, blah, blah. And then papirmahin nyo siya. Even electronic signature, even just by acknowledging the email, it means that they agree to your terms, and, they'll be treating the exam with highest levels of confidentiality.
Okay, meron tayong isang question dito na I think medyo mabigat ng question ito from Mark John Peter. Since some provinces have limited access or no access to internet, video call might be hard to establish to source qualified candidates. How can we maximize the use of phone interview?
Actually, before naman magkaroon ng internet, phone interview naman talaga. So, if it's being done before, siguro still nagpe-face to face, pero the latter part, still okay to go with phone interviews. If you need to conduct phone interviews, siguro involve stakeholders. Kunyari, you're the HR person, you're the recruitment person. Do a thorough phone interview. Really structure your interview in a way that your follow-up questions will really dig deeper, probe, etc. And then involve more stakeholders. If you cannot do video calls, phone interviews is okay, pero i-involve mo lang talaga yung other stakeholders. Apart from HR, involve the hiring manager, maybe someone in within that team who's doing the same job already, or a department head or whatnot. Involve a lot of stakeholders and then discuss after. Kumbaga, ang difference lang is video calls, you can see the person. Phone interview, nakarely ka lang sa boses niya. Pero if you have different people speaking to the candidate, and then you reconvene and discuss if pare-pareho ba kayo ng opinion, I think you'll be able to come to a conclusion. And then if need be, kung kailangan talaga ng face to face, but if you have a satellite office in that province, well and good. Then if you don't, unless you really want to spend and fly the candidate here and do a face to face interview, why not? Pero if not, involve a lot of people in the phone interview. And then maybe instead of doing three, maybe do 4 or 5 phone interviews with different stakeholders and then discuss. Para hindi lang ilang tao yung nagde-decide. I mean, the more people you involve, the better feel you'll have for the candidate.
Yeah, agree. If for example you're limited by, let's say, internet access, hindi po pwede yung interview via Skype or online. I think ang magiging sagot nyo dyan is to just make sure that you have a stringent process in place. So dagdagan lang nung kung sino yung mga taong involved. It might be time consuming. Kailangan lang na right from the start set na kagad yung expectations with the candidate na you'll have to go through this number of interviews before we make a final decision. This might take X number of days para at least aware din sila. And then, make sure na talagang kung sino man yung nag interview mag-uusap-usap din kayo. Kasi ang ano nila ngayon is naririnig nyo na kung ano yung sinasabi ng applicant eh. So you have to make sure na mag-uusap-usap lahat na nag-interviews to see if pare-pareho ba yung naging sagot or naging behavior ng applicant during the interview. And again, I would highlight the importance of behavioral interview here. So yung mga those who are watching right now who have attended the last HR boot camp, I think it's one of the topics that we have discussed, yung behavioral interview. The current situation that we are in right now, this is the best way to apply kung ano man yung natutunan nyo sa behavioral interview because this will allow you to check if nagsasabi ba ng totoo yung applicant, if talaga bang qualified sila, what is the behavior, how they are with their work. This will allow you to have a glimpse or have an idea of how they are. Kasi with behavioral interview, you're using the past behavior to determine kung ano ba yung magiging future behavior nyo. So this is the best time to apply that. Okay?
Agree, 100%.
Yes. So meron din po tayong question from Miss Bri Gonzalez. How do you provide closure to a lot of candidates if talent acquisition team workforce is limited? Kasi hindi pa lahat nakakapag-work
Hmm.
right now.
Actually, the some time ago, I did recruitment for BPOs, Teletech. I did recruitment for Teletech for agent positions. Yung process namin is if hindi na sila pumasa, may ibibigay na kami sa kanilang papel, maliit na slip. Parang 1/4 or 1/8 sheet of paper. Pag inabot namin yon, pag binuksan nila, nakalagay doon, thank you for your interest for the position. However, you did not pass due to XYZ, you may reapply after 3 months. We do that. On the spot, alam na nila agad. With Manila recruitment, with what we do is, if it's a bulk recruitment, kasi we with MR, we hired a couple of bulk roles. Hindi sila agents, pero more of paralegals or something. Email blast, text blast, and email blast. You don't need to call them one by one kung madami. What if 100 people applied and then you need to inform them that they all did not pass? Email, you know, email blanket or text blast should be okay as long as you tell them the reason why, or hindi ka naman obliged to tell them the reason why, but if you just tell them thank you for your interest, but unfortunately you did not meet our qualifications, thank you and we wish you the best in your job search. Ganun lang. Even if it's text blast, send to all, or email, send to all, that's okay. As long as you provide them. Providing closure is better than receiving no closure at all. So kahit text lang yan,
Correct.
okay lang yun. Okay lang yun. Basta ma-inform lang sila na hindi sila pumasa, okay na yun.
Correct. And may nag-message sa akin, familiar, kaya pala daw familiar ka. Teletech din, ka din daw pala, kasi Teletech din daw siya. Okay, so,
Oh, okay.
so isa sa mga ating nanonood ngayon is from Teletech. And I think if you have the budget for it, it might be a good time to have an applicant tracking system in place.
Yep.
So, kung wala kayo noon but you're subscribed to JobStreet actually allows that. Pwede kayong mag-send ng mass rejection mail. As long as kasi si JobStreet, kailangan mo lang naman ayusin yung applicants mo.
Folders.
Depending
Yep.
on the folder. May folders yun eh. So, pwede kayong mag-mass send sa lahat ng nasa rejected folders. Automatic yun. Sila na yung magsisend ng rejection letter, isang bagsakan lahat. Or, if you're not using JobStreet but you're looking for a free applicant tracking system, one of the applicant tracking systems that I can recommend is Smart Recruiter. They actually have a free package if hindi lalagpas ng 10 yung job posts na gagawin nyo. So kung hindi ka lalagpas ng 10, pwede kayong kahit ilan pa kayong gumamit yan as long as you only have 10 job postings, free siya. So kung kunwari meron ka ika-11, tanggal lang kayo ng isa para 10 pa rin yung live job posts nyo. free siya forever. Pwede nyo siyang i-set up na pag meron kayo ni-reject, automatic na magsisend siya ng rejection letter. So I think that's one of the ways that you can handle yung pagsisend ng rejection letter or closure letters. Lalo na if you're limited, yung workforce nyo is limited. So yun.
Yep. Yep.
So what can you suggest for manufacturing company who is hiring blue collar jobs? How can I conduct trade test or exam?
That's not. That's very tricky actually. Kasi with these types of position, you really need to check yung technical skills nila. Maybe if you're gonna review the resume and then the resume speaks for itself, kunyari 15 years na siyang nagwe-weld tsaka pintor, I think hindi na necessary yung assessment kasi kumbaga the experience speaks for itself already. But if the experience say, is just a couple of years or maybe 1 year, then yon kailangan mo siyang i-test. Pero then again, if you have options to hire someone who's more senior and more junior and almost same lang naman yung sweldo, I'd rather hire yung more senior para kumbaga mas marami na siyang skills, mas magagawa na niya yung trabaho. If you're budget-led, kumbaga kung tipong ito lang talaga yung budget mo, ito lang yung ma-afford yung skills, then you have to do the assessment. So like what we've discussed earlier, okay naman eh. There are public transportations, there are buses, MRT is, back in operations, train, LRT, etc. There are limited buses. Meron naman na. It's just that kailangan lang mag-practice ng high safety standards. So if you need the person to go to the office, papuntahin mo, i-remind mo na lang, mag-face mask ka. Tapos pagdating sa office, check temperature, ganyan. Tapos always follow yung safety standards na meron tayo ngayon.
True. So, ano nyo lang, make sure lang na nag-adhere pa rin kayo doon sa guidelines set by IATF. So, make sure that there's yung mga sanitizers in place, yung inyong kung saan man gagawin yung trade test, lagi siyang nasa-sanitize after each use, and schedule nyo lang ng tama para hindi sila isang bagsakan pupunta. So give enough time for your maintenance people to clean up yung kung saan man gagawin yung trade test. Make sure that you have PPEs, masks and etc. that your applicants will need para to ensure na safe din naman sila. Medyo mahirap lang yung asking them to come to the office for the exam kasi I don't think they would be very happy and very secure na pumunta sa opisina. So that's one of the things that you have to work on. You have to make sure that they are aware na they would, anong bibigay sa kanila to ensure na safe sila. So let them know that you would be giving them face mask, you would be giving them some sort of a PPE during the exam para hindi, alam nila na safe sila, hindi sila mahahawa, hindi sila magkakasakit, hindi sila magkakaroon ng COVID during the exam. So I think right now, that's the best way to handle it.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. And then po, may question po. Paano daw po yung wildcard search?
It's 2 asterisks. The asterisk sign and then just free text na yun eh. Pwede nating, sige, I'll try searching Rachel May Ricardo.
So, paano daw ba? 2 asterisks
2
and
asterisks
then?
lang. And then followed by the name or whatever it is that you want to search.
So, kunwari,
so
something similar to this. Correct? Tama ba? Ganyan?
Yes. Yep, ganyan.
Okay. So guys, ganito po yung itsura niya. Ayan, pag kayo po ay mag-wildcard search. Okay, yan po ang tawag sa kanya. Wildcard search po ang tawag po dyan. So ito po yung mga ginagamit ng mga may hinahanap sa Facebook.
Yung mga nagsustalk, ganyan, yung mga yung kumbaga i-run through nung search engine lahat ng web page na may pangalan nung nandyan eh. So, most of the time effective naman siya.
Okay. And then next question, do you have new pattern process or tool to become more effective talent acquisition team?
New pattern, new process and tool. Yung tool, not really. I mean, process, definitely. Like what we've discussed. So yung ngayon is really, it's heavy on managing the candidate's expectations. And then headhunting, of course, still the number one resource for us. Kasi if you're I've discussed earlier our process. We don't rely on job boards. We seldom post job ads. We rely on headhunting. So either through online, social media, local community groups, Facebook groups, organizations, etc. So we rely heavily on that. Ayaw namin yung nagpo-post ng ad tapos mag-aantay kami ng applicants. We wanna be out there and we wanna be reaching out for them. But the process, yeah, it's the same. It's just that now we're more careful and we need to consider what's happening. So instead of having 3 interviews in the office, we do video calls, a lot of video calls, and then the last final interview, we invite the person to the office. As for the tool, it's the same. We're just using our database, nothing really special. Maybe it's just our approach. We need to shift our approach and we need to place ourselves in the shoes of the candidate. Kung paano mo gusto matreat as a candidate, dapat ganun mo rin i-treat yung candidates mo. So you need to be you need to consider their safety. It's always your priority, and then managing expectations, and then really communicating to them the things that you have to. It's okay to over communicate as long as updated yung candidate. It's nothing special. It's really more of we we evolve or we shift our approach because the times calls for it. If it wasn't for the COVID, for pandemic, I would still prefer face-to-face interviews. I would limit my video calls to maybe just 1 or 2, and then you know face-to-face talaga with myself, with our team, ganyan. But since times are different, we would need to adapt and we would need to adjust our approach.
Okay, next question po. I think this is for, if my understanding is correct, this is more of a psychological test, confidentiality of the exam if sent via Word document po. Okay, if you're using a proprietary psychological test, make sure that you follow the guidelines. May guidelines po yan, lalo na doon sa ganitong situation. If you're trying to administer it online, there are guidelines for that, and most likely there are online versions for that. So you have to follow that. Yung pong mga psychological tests yan po ay hindi nyo po yan po pwedeng basta-basta isend kasi meron po yung may tracking yan. So kailangan psychometrician ang nag-a-administer niyan and psychologist yung mag-issue ng results. You have to follow kung ano man po yung mga guidelines on how to handle the exam. Now, if the exam is something that you made yourself or your organization was the one who made the exam, ang pinakamagandang kung kinakailangan nyo pong i-send via email, i-encrypt nyo po yung email nyo para siya lang po yung makakakita. Or if you're using Gmail, Gmail actually has a way to delete yung email after some time. So if you're providing the applicants, let's say 24 hours to send in their reply, po pwede nyo gawin na the email will delete itself after 24 hours. Meron pong ganong feature na si Gmail. So check nyo lang po yun. Either you encrypt the email if you're using Outlook, but if you're using Gmail, try nyo po yung mga yung po pwede siyang mabura. May schedule siya na kung kailan siya po pwedeng mabura. Check nyo po yun sa Gmail. Para maprotektahan nyo po yung confidentiality ng exam nyo. If ayaw nyo naman po na makopya yung exam, send the exam in PDF format. Si PDF kasi, si Adobe Reader, meron siyang functionality that allows the recipient to write their answers. Kiklik lang nila yung fill and sign. Pwede na nilang sulat doon yung answers nila. And then that would be saved as PDF. Hindi nyo na kailangan ibigay siya in Word document. Pwede nyo siyang ibigay in PDF. Free, kahit sa free version po ng Adobe Reader, meron po yung ganong functionality. Yun po yung ginagamit namin right now if ever we're sending documents that need to be signed. So, Adobe Reader lang po yung katapat nun. I hope,
Yep,
Jelly, that
I
answered your
agree.
question. Yes po, sorry.
Yep. Same with us kasi the 2 hires that we brought on board is nasa CDO ang ay nasa Davao. So I signed the document, and then the president signed the document. We convert it to PDF. We send it to the candidate. And then yun, from there, pinirma niya, binalik niya sa amin. So if you don't want na maiba or, just to make sure na yung document na sinend mo is ganun lang talaga, you convert the word to PDF and then you send it out. Hindi na nila may edit yun unless i-convert nila ulit sa Word, di ba?
Correct. Okay, next po, tips on how to know the behavior or attitude of the candidate if he or she is fit for the position.
This is where the behavioral, yeah, Rona discussed about that several times. And then, of course, if there's behavioral, there's also culture fit. Kaya importante na may ibang stakeholders na mag-interview for the candidate. With my current company, I've only been here 9 or 10 months. So in that span of time, I'm still gauging the culture. You know, I wouldn't say I've memorized it, but I have a good handle of it now compared when I started last year. But the employees who've been with the company for more than 15, 20 years, sila mismo yung kultura eh. Diba? So that's why we need to involve these employees kasi they're the best person to assess if culturally mag-fit ba tong candidate sa position. When I was in Manila recruitment, it's a different story. I've stayed with them for over 6 years. So within the first 15 minutes, not di nga, within the first 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, alam ko kung pasok agad sa culture namin kasi I'm part of it, you know, I'm there, I'm in that culture. But with GRB, our our SVP for sales, she's been with the business for more than 25 years. So alam talaga niya yung kultura. That's why her buy-in is very important. When she conducts the interviews, she gauges that. Ang ina-assess ko is you know, the candidates behavior, the candidate's background, past work experiences, and then it's her job to assess the culture fit. As what are the techniques? You know, this is a tricky part kasi I know how to conduct the interview, pero iba kasi, like put it this way, if you've been with your company, say for 2 or 3 years, alam mo dapat kung paano yung culture eh. Paano
Mm-mm.
yung culture ng mga katrabaho mo eh. And then from there, you conceptualize questions kung paano mo magigauge yung pagiging fit ng candidate o hindi. Kumbaga, kung yung team mo ba or kung yung company niyo ba is, you know, pag lunch, sabay-sabay ba kayong kumakain? Or do you go out for dinner or drinks after work? Or how do you interact with each other? Kung strict ba kayo, kung pagdating ba ng 8 o'clock, trabaho, dire-diretso, or during work hours, you can, you know, play around or you can kid around, may konting kulitan, konting asaran while being productive. These are you can quantify these things eh. You cannot put boundaries, you cannot set parameters, you cannot really, you know, hindi mo pwedeng i-measure eh. Ito yung ikaw yung makakaalam kasi nandiyan ka sa company na yan. So, think of that, think of how everyone works in the team, and then try to conceptualize questions within that. So I think that's the best way how to go about it. As for the culture itself, kung baga nakadepende yun sa culture ng company nyo. So you need to understand first your company's culture para makapag-ask ka ng questions dun sa candidate na interviewin mo.
Ako, ang suggestion ko na is number one, yun nga, you should have a knowledge of how to conduct behavioral interview. That's very, very important. Especially during this time na karamihan ng ating mga initiatives ay done online. So that's very, very important. The second is you have to go back to your roots. Understand, and this is in relation to what TJ has mentioned. You have to understand the values of your organization. Ano yung values ng inyong organization? And then from there, you can actually come up with your own questions for your behavioral interview that will help you know if there is a culture fit, organization fit, if the candidate possesses the right skill for the position. Dapat konektado lahat yon. Hindi kayo po pwedeng mag-behavioral interview without knowing ano ba yung culture, ano yung values, ano yung mission, vision ng organization. And as HR, as part of HR, you need to have an understanding for that in order for you to see ano ba yung kailangan mo, ano ba yung kailangan na meron ng isang applicant bago sila i-hire. So that's my suggestion for that one on how you're going to handle that. Yan. I hope that answers the question. Phone-in question lang po yan. So I hope that answers the question. Last one po natin. Is it practical to invest in LinkedIn? How can we make the most of FB for sourcing applicants?
When you say invest, do you mean get a recruiter account or just spend time? Kasi if
I
you're gonna
think,
get a
I think
recruiter,
both. I think both.
both. Kasi if
Uh,
like depends on how big your network already na eh. Kasi with my case, since I started in recruitment quite some time ago, medyo na-build ko na yung LinkedIn ko. Para ngayon, yun na yung go-to tool ko ngayon eh. Pero if we're gonna look back, maybe around 8, 10 years ago, I wouldn't say si LinkedIn yung best tool ko kasi binibuild ko pa lang siya. Ilan pa lang yung connections ko eh. Pero ngayon, since marami ng connections, andun na lahat. Kung baga, napalitan ng LinkedIn ko si JobStreet kasi mas marami na akong connections eh. Pero when I was starting, of course, we would still rely on job portals, JobStreet, JobsDB, Monster, etc. We would still tap these resources. I suggest you invest time. You invest time and you invest in adding connections. Kasi it doesn't mean naman na you're adding them, you're gonna hire them. No,
Mm-mm.
you can add people because you want to grow your network. Let's say sa ano ka, sa manufacturing. So you research kung sino-sino ba yung mga nasa manufacturing industry. Sino ba yung plant manager, sino ba yung QA manager, sino ba yung marketing manager, and then you start adding people. Generally kasi si LinkedIn, people will mas mataas yung chance. People are more inclined to accept your invite in LinkedIn rather than in Facebook. Kasi sa
Yes,
Facebook,
yes.
parang pag in-add ka, hindi ko na makilala to eh. We're not
Oo.
friends. I'm not gonna accept. Pero sa LinkedIn, everyone is thinking, generally speaking, the mindset of the people in LinkedIn are, we're here to build networks. We're here to build networks na in the future, I might need your services or I might apply for you or you might apply for me. So mas ganun yung mindset ni LinkedIn eh. I suggest you invest in adding connections. Just keep on adding people. Create ka ng small note. Hi, I'd like to add you for potential opportunities in the future, and then just send it. And then pag in-accept, thank you for connecting, appreciate it, stay safe, etc. Ganun lang. Kumbaga, small talks, pero over the years, if you're gonna continuously build on your LinkedIn, dadating yung time baka hindi mo na kailanganan din talaga yung mga job portals.
Mm.
Facebook recruitment nowadays, sa dami ng mga online mga Facebook groups, yes, I would say you spend more time in LinkedIn, maybe around 60% LinkedIn and then 40% Facebook. Kasi with Facebook, our local culture, we're not inclined to. Facebook is more of a personal use, so to speak. You don't post work-related stuffs in Facebook, not unless nagra-run ka sa kumpanya mo, tapos makita ka ng HR, lagot ka. Di ba? Parang, oh, what's that? Take down that post, etc. So it's good to invest on both, but probably invest more in LinkedIn. Kasi ito yung professional eh. Ito yung professional side eh. But still, if you're gonna do headhunting, utilize both. We
Mm-hmm.
have a session with Uprush then we discuss yung Boolean search strings. It will teach you how to search on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I would suggest invest in both. If you want to be spending on LinkedIn, so there's a feature called recruiter account, or it's a paid subscription, pero you can view more profiles. Kasi pag free account ka lang, you can only view yung mga second or third connections eh. And then you can only look for you can only run X number of searches. Pero 10 years ago, hindi ganon. Search ka lang ng search. Add ka lang ng add. Pero siguro, everything and everyone is evolving. LinkedIn evolved in such a way na nakita nila na pwede nilang pagkakitaan, di ba? Parang we have a huge network, why not limit yung free account and then they need to subscribe para they can view more profiles. Siguro if the need is really there, kasi yung LinkedIn is every month eh. You need to subscribe every month or you need to pay an annual fee. You
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to consult your finance if okay ba sila dun sa. And it's not cheap. It's not cheap to have a recruiter seat in LinkedIn. Mag-post ka na lang ng job ad, mga 10 job ad equals one recruiter seat in LinkedIn. So, medyo mahal. So, I'd rather spend more time in building my network first and
Yes.
then utilizing Facebook. Kasi as although this is not our problem as HR, we don't care about finances eh. Kasi tayo, hihingi lang tayo ng pera sa finance, magpo-post ka lang ng ad or what have you. Hindi mo iniisip ano yan, yung kumbaga yung bearing nun. Pero if you're a considerate HR person, nahihiya ka rin na hingi na lang ako ng hingi ng
Mm-mm.
pera mo sa pad, wala naman ako na-hire. Nakakaya naman sa finance manager ko. So you need to consider that. Invest on LinkedIn, definitely invest when it comes to your time and your efforts in adding people, building your network, and invest in Facebook the same in researching what groups are out there when it comes to the positions that you're looking to fill.
Okay. May mga nagtatanong po, ano daw yung email, ay ano daw yung sinabi ko kaninang website? Smart Recruiter po. So yan po yung website nila. www.smartrecruiter.com. Po pwede nyo pong pwede nyo pong puntahan yan. As long as 10 jobs lang po ang ipopost nyo, free po yan. So yun po. Smart Recruiter actually started around 2010. Dati naka-beta testing lang kami noon. I'm part of the beta testers for that website. And it's grown to a very profitable and very huge company, and it's actually a good way, it's a good applicant tracking system na online kasi once you post via Smart Recruiter, may way na rin siya para i-post siya, i-blast siya sa iba pang mga free websites like yung free version ng Indeed, free version I think Monster, hindi ko sure kung ano yung mga naka-tie up sa kanila, pero may mga naka-tie up sa kanila ng mga websites na once na pinost mo kay Smart Recruiter, ibablast nila yun para mas malaki yung magiging coverage nyo. So yun. So yan po yung para dun sa mga nagtatanong. We also have, I think, one last question po. Is it better to stay as a recruiter in a specific industry, or is it okay to try other industry?
Very interesting. Depends on what you want, but binabalik ko lagi yung tanong sa nagtatanong. I'll share a little bit of my background. So I started my career started as a service crew in Jollibee, a call center agent for teleperformance and converges, and then a recruiter for Teletech. If I stayed in recruiting agents, I wouldn't be able to talk this way right now. If nag-decide ako na mag-recruit lang ako ng agents for, for the next how many years, I wouldn't have learned the things that I was able to learn now. We need to diversify. If I decided to stay in talent acquisition, oh, yung before I took the job in GRB as an HR manager, alam to ni Ron, I have an offer to become a director, talent acquisition director for a company in
Sayang!
eh, it's sayang, director na naging manager pa. So my last job was a senior manager, and then I got an opportunity to become a director for talent acquisition for a BPO in Ortigas. But if I took that job, would I learn other facets of HR? So what I'm trying to say is you need to know where you want to go. What do you want to do as an HR practitioner? Do you want to stay in a specific industry? Say if you're in the manufacturing, do you want to recruit in the manufacturing industry for the foreseeable future? If yes, why not? You can be a master of that field. Kaya mo nang mag-recruit ng whatever position kahit nakapikit ka. Or do you want to diversify? Do you want to learn how other industry, what are the practices for other industries? And then you consider that. You switch your, you switch your learning a bit. It depends on what you want. But to answer your questions, I'd rather diversify. It's good that you master one craft. It's better if you learn others. Kung sobrang galing mo na, kung feeling mo sobrang galing mo na mag-recruit sa industry mo, why not try the other industry? Magugulat ka. Parang you would think, akala mo alam mo na eh, ang dami mo nang alam. And then nung tinuloy mo yung kabila, parang ay, this is a whole new ball game pala. It's a whole new field. When I first recruited for agents, it took me almost 2 years. Hanggang sa yung ramps namin was talagang nafe-fill na namin. Wala na kaming backlogs. And then I sort of got bored because I keep asking the same questions all over again. Iba lang yung natatanungan ko. Minsan pag medyo engaging yung candidate, we tend to speak longer. If the candidate is boring, let's move on to the next. And then I switched to executive search. And then I did hiring for HR, for finance, for IT. IT was shocking. My first few years in IT recruitment, who would know that Java is not just a cup of coffee? Who would know Java is a technology? Laravel, PHP, HD, these technologies that I haven't even heard of before. I started learning them, I started studying them, and then the next thing I know, medyo nagko-code na ako, pero WordPress lang. So it depends on what you want to do, Zelly, and everyone that's listening, it depends on what you want to do and where you want to go. I started in recruitment. I spent 12 years in recruitment. Came to a point that I feel I've mastered recruitment, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot of things. Right now, I'm recruiting for a niche role. We have 5 open positions. We closed 3. We still have 2 open. The fifth one, it's challenging. It's the first time I've handled that industry. I'm still learning a lot. I've mapped out companies already. There are 8 or 9 companies within that industry. I've tapped almost everyone from those companies, but I'm still learning. So what I'm trying to say is know where you want to go first, and then know where your passion is. Once you've identified, you push through. Never stop learning. There's always something new to learn every day, even if you've mastered recruitment or labor relations or employee engagement or timekeeping payroll. There's always something new to learn. I'd rather diversify once I've already mastered one craft and then continuously learn.
Ako, suggestion ko, there is actually no better. There's no concept of better. You like what TGS mentioned. You can decide to stay as a recruiter in a specific industry, or you can try out other industries. It's up to you kung saan ka komportable. So kung saan sa tingin mo magiging masaya ka. Lalo na right now, and this was part of the talk that I had earlier. I think in the foreseeable future, the idea of hopping will no longer exist. It's my belief that it will no longer exist in the next few months. Bakit? Given what's happening right now, it's expected na people will hop. It's expected that people, once everything is over, once we are in the new normal, they would look into other companies, especially if they're not happy with how their company managed yung situation. So there's a big risk or big possibility that people will job hop in the next few months. So it's not something that's bad. It's part of growing. I believe that job hopping is part of growing. Even when I was doing recruitment, I have never looked at job hopping as a negative aspect of an applicant. Kasi there is always a reason for that. So for me, it's up to you kung saan ka masaya. You can try it out. If you're happy with it, then sige, tuloy mo. If you're not happy with it, then you can always go back to kung ano man yung area na comfortable ka. But like what TJS mentioned, you can diversify. Go where your heart is. Go where you're happy and comfortable with. Yun naman yung masasabi ko. May follow-up
Yep.
question siya actually. What preparation have you taken when you were beginning as a recruiter?
This memory lane, no? Reminisce. I have this thinking, fake it till you make it. Always.
Naalala mo pa ba?
It's still in my head, even up to now. Fake it till you make it. Kasi when I recruited agents, I was an agent kasi dati. So, nung nag-recruit ako ng agent, madali lang kasi agent ako eh. Alam ko yung ginagawa. Kailangan magaling ka mag-English, magaling yung logic mo, ganyan, troubleshooting, whatever. So, madali lang yun. When I transitioned from agents to execs, yun yung medyo talagang kinabahan ako. I can still remember the first executive interview that I had was with a finance manager for a manufacturing company. 2000 and anyway. So, yun yung
Oh,
very
baka
first
nabanggit.
very first interview ko ng exec. Tapos, finance manager siya eh. So, sakop nila at AR, accounts receivable, accounts collectible, lahat talaga ng finance eh. So, supposedly, my senior consultant will be doing the interview. And she called in sick. And we've already confirmed it. The candidate will be in the office at 10 o'clock. Nung nag-call in sick yung senior consultant ko ng 8:50, 8:05, ganyan, 8:10, I spent the next hours until 10 o'clock. Inaral ko kung ano yung finance manager. Binasa ko yung job description, nag-research ako, ganyan. As in, hinabol ko talaga. Tapos nung ini-interview ko na siya, napansin niya actually, parang after na interview, sabi niya, is this your first time interviewing for this position? Sabi ko, yes ma'am. Sabi niya, well, you did a good job. But may mga time na, kasi yeah, she was 43 or 44 nung time na yun eh. I was very young. So parang, nalaman niya na nagsistutter ako at some point. So, how did I prepare for it? I did a lot of research. I did a lot of reading. Tapos pero nung interview, is literally fake it till you make it. Parang pinapakita ko na hindi ako kinakabahan eh. Pero she clocked 2 instances na nag-gauge niya na hindi ako hardcore pa mag-interview ng finance eh. So, I read a lot. So, from 8:20 ganyan hanggang 10, basa lang ako ng basa about finance, ano yung ginagawa. And then, ginawa ko na siyang practice. Nung na-overcome ko yun, eto na, binigyan ako ng finance roles. Tapos, nag-shift ako sa IT. Yung IT was really hardcore. Like, iba yung IT, iba yung mundo ng mga developers, grabe.
Oo. I think naghang si ano, naghang. I think TJ is having some technical difficulties. Okay, pero if you would ask me on how you can prepare, if you're beginning as a recruiter, how you can prepare about this. Sa akin kasi when I first started as a recruiter, usually naman kasi pag psych graduate ka, your first step would always be sa recruitment. So the first time that I handled recruitment, more of like fake it till you make it din yung nangyari sa akin eh. You just need to be confident that you can handle the task and you can do the job. But of course, you also need to study the position. Ano ba yung pinaprocess mo na position? Ano yung kailangan mong malaman about the position? So things like that, you have to be aware of those prior to actually conducting the interview itself. Kasi you can fake it, but only to a certain point. If you really don't know what you're doing or things like that, medyo mahihirapan ka. So study the position, study what you need to learn about the position, and even before you go through all of this, read on what are the different ways you can handle the interview, what are the different methods of conducting interview. Arm yourself with that knowledge para mas alam mo kung ano yung pwede mong gawin once na nandun ka na, once nag-start ka na in your profession as a recruiter. So yun. So I think TJ na wala ka kanina.
Yeah, sorry.
Oo.
Nung
Mukhang
nagtatlong
meron.
dot yung laptop ko, nag-switch agad ako sa mobile. Very reliable ang
Okay.
PLDT.
Ay, yes, oo.
Nag-connect ako sa hotspot ng phone ko. Anyway, so, yeah, do a lot of reading. Talagang learn. Never stop learning. If it helps, yung previous employer ko, check niyo yung website, manilarecruitment.com, and then check niyo yung blogs. I used to write a lot kasi nung nasa MR ako, kumbaga dumating ako sa peak ng pagre-recruit eh. So, naging confident ako to write about recruitment kasi I've done a lot of recruitment, I've heard a lot of people, ganyan, execs, rank and file, what have you. So, nagsulat ako, nag-create ako ng mga articles. If it's gonna help, go to their website, manilarecruitment.com, and then check nyo yung blogs, mga blogs. So, may mga articles doon, anything and everything that you need to learn about recruitment. And even up to now, since I've taken an HR manager role, I do a lot of reading. Tapos ng labor codes. Never stop learning. If you wanna, kung may gusto mong bagong matutunan, kung gusto mong mag-shift from recruitment to Compen and Ben, aralin. Aralin, never stop learning. Read, learn, understand. And it's also important to have a mentor. Malaking bagay pag
Correct,
yung may
correct.
nag-guide sa'yo and someone who's telling you that you're on the right track, you're doing good, or maybe you should try a different approach, etc.
Okay. Second to the last question. Kanina pa ako last question, last question. Kasi may pumapasok. So second to the last question. What is really the main difference of a recruitment specialist to a talent acquisition specialist? So I'll let TJ answer first based on his understanding.
It's just the spelling. No, I'm kidding. Kasi we define talent acquisition as the whole process eh. Part and parcel siya ng from open yung position hanggang sa ma-fill mo yung position. And then looking beyond. Kumbaga talent acquisition is talent that will not just answer yung short-term need but yung long-term need ng company mo. Whereas recruitment is reactive. Recruitment is may open position ka, magre-recruit ka. Talent acquisition is ano na eh, parang you're looking beyond the current needs. And then kahit wala kang open position, pwede ka pa rin mag-talent acquisition. Pwede ka pa rin mag cold call, mag-build ng database mo. Recruitment specialist and talent acquisition specialist, actually, if you look at industries, kahit sa industries, it's almost the same. Maybe the difference is how the organization sees the department. And maybe
Correct.
depending on the head. If a talent acquisition team, if yung vision ng TA manager is to build a talent pool that's gonna answer our recruitment needs for the next 6 months. That's talent acquisition. And then pag TA specialist ka, kahit wala kang recruitment, kahit wala kang requisition, nag-recruit ka pa rin. Nagtatawag ka kasi binibuild mo yung candidate pool mo. Whereas if sa recruitment ka, you're focused on closing a certain position that you need ASAP.
In my case naman, let's go first with why there was a change in the name. Actually, in the past kasi recruitment had a negative connotation. Yung mga agencies, kaya medyo hindi maganda yung appreciation for recruitment. But basically, recruitment and talent acquisition is the same. The difference is with talent acquisition, as the name implies, you acquire talent. You do not hire just about anybody. You go for talents. So it starts like what TJ has mentioned. It starts from the manpower planning, the workforce planning, up to the onboarding, and sometimes even beyond the onboarding. The team will check if after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, if the applicant's still there, then it was a good hire. So si talent acquisition mas mahaba yung kino-cover niya kasi they need to make sure that yung na-hire nila is really a talent and not just hiring someone for the sake of hiring someone. So that's the main difference between the two. But basically, same lang yung inaano nila, gusto nilang ma-achieve to get people to fill open positions with the company. So yun lang naman yun. Okay, so I think last na talaga to, last question na to. Specifically for engineer sourcing for the construction industry. Any tips or suggestions kahit may pandemic, how to go about sourcing and recruitment?
For construction, if you've heard about Society of Manufacturing Engineers, kasi they have different organizations, especially for that. Meron ding Philippine Society of Manufacturing Engineers, Philippine Society of maraming different organizations that can actually help you. So if you're looking for these positions, I suggest you tie up with them. Know who's within those organization, know who's sino yung what events do they have, do they have a Facebook page, do they have a Facebook group, etc. And then try to getting in within those groups. How do you get in? Be very upfront and very honest. Tell them that I'm from company ABC. We're a construction company. We're gonna be hiring for engineers. And then you tell them na, we understand that your organization is composed of engineers with different expertise for that specific industry. Maraming groups. I'm confident there's a good number of Facebook groups for these positions. I suggest you leverage on them. Uh, warm up first the group and then reach out by adding people either in LinkedIn or Facebook and then introduce yourself and then share the details about your company. And then pag napasok mo na yung groups, you start reaching out to people individually. So same approach. I would do same approach in recruiting for any other positions. You have to be in the community para malaman mo kung sino yung mga tao, kung ano yung mga organizations within that community para mas madali kang makapag-reach out.
Mm. I think now more than ever, na-highlight yung importance ng pagkakaroon ng strong network, especially with kung ano man yung industry that your organization belongs to. Kasi that will help you with when it comes to sourcing and looking for applicants. So yun. So I think we have finished all of the questions right now. So for those asking how they can join the labor relations and labor case webinar. It's happening on August 8th. So if you would want to register, just take a quick shot of the QR code. Kung may QR reader po kayo, you can make use of that para po mabasa yung QR code. Or if you can't, you can just head to the URL indicated here. So when we send these slides to you, makikita niyo po yung URL. Pwede po kayong mag-register po dyan. The last day of registration for the Labor Relations and Labor Cases webinar ay sa August 7, 12 midnight po. So August 8 po yan, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We would be for 3 or 4 p.m. We would be discussing about the different approaches to labor relations, regardless if it's pandemic or not. What are the labor laws that you have to adhere to, and how do you handle labor cases if ever you come across labor cases in the future? For those asking for certificate of attendance, if you haven't sent in your details yet, your company name, your full name, and your email address, if hindi nyo pa po nasisend yun, you can scan this code in order for you to register, or if nahuli po kayo ng registration, you can make use of this to register po. If you're unable or if you do not have a QR code, again, you can send your company name, full name, and email address to our Facebook page. We will use that for your certificate of attendance. If you've already done this before, if nag-reserve na po kayo ng slot before and you've indicated your full name, company name, and email address, you don't have to do it again. But if you would, let's say you want to change spelling ng pangalan, nagkamali kayo ng input before, just send us the correct details para yun po yung gagamitin namin. Otherwise, kung ano man po yung na-capture namin na data or details, yun po yung gagamitin namin for the certificate of attendance. Slides and video would be made available to you as well, so you don't have to worry about how you're going to get a copy of the slides and the video. The video will be on our webpage forever, so pwede nyo po siyang balik-balikan po doon. You can share it with your teammates if you want po. Okay po. And then, reminder lang po dun sa mga a-attend ng next session. Next session is employee engagement during the pandemic. So if you're attending that one po, it would be a different platform. Hindi po siya sa Facebook page na natin. Gagawin po siya doon po sa ating Facebook group, which is the Society for the Advancement of HR in the Philippines. We have a very special guest next week. She has been in the HR industry for quite some time now. She has worked with a number of different multinational organizations. So the discussion next week would be a very, very fruitful one. Third week po natin naman po, tayo po ay we're going to have a discussion on labor laws. So maganda rin po yung discussion by next week. So yun po, if you haven't registered for those, just go to our Facebook page, click on the event, and then click on reserve a slot in order to reserve your slot. Again, next session po ay hindi na po sa Facebook page, sa group po siya. So please make sure po na you check your calendar invite. Nandun po yung link ng group. Nasa bandang baba po, check nyo po doon. If you would like to become sponsors at ma-feature po ang inyong company, organization, or if you would like a video regarding your organization to be shown, you can email us para mabigyan po namin kayo ng aming mga sponsorship package. The bronze package is free. Kailangan nyo lang pong i-share at i-tweet yung ating pong mga events para po maging free po siya. Okay? So yun po. Any last words po, Kati J?
Di pa ako ganun katanda, Kati J. Well, yeah. Again, if you're still employed, if you have a job, be very thankful. So during these times, there are a lot of people who are unemployed that we're working. Let's always do our best and help our company. You know, these challenging times will prove kung paano yung relationship between employee and employer is. So if we help our company, I'm sure they will return the favor, and I'm sure we will all be able to heal and we will able to rise above these challenging times.
Ayan, thank you everyone po for watching. Ulitin ko lang po yung mga, meron po tayo on Monday free webinar, free roundtable discussion, not free webinar, free roundtable discussion regarding help. I'm an overwhelmed HR. So if you're feeling overwhelmed po, you can watch the webinar, the roundtable discussion on Monday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Didiscuss po natin on the different ways on how you can handle stress, time management, during the pandemic. Yung pong August 8 po natin, ito po ay paid seminar po ito. So if you would want to be part of labor relations and labor cases, free paid po ito. There is a fee if you want to be part of it. Yung next po natin, which is yun pong ating employee engagement during the pandemic, yun po ang ating free webinar. So do sa page po natin, as long as naka-indicate po na free webinar, free po yun, wala po kayong po problemahin na babayaran po doon. Okay po? So maraming salamat po sa lahat po nagstay. Medyo nag-overtime po tayo ngayon. Sumobra po tayo ng 14 minutes. But thank you everyone for joining us. If you have additional questions, concerns, you can just send it via our Facebook page or comment it below para po ma-address po natin yan even after this webinar po. Maraming salamat po. Hindi po exclusive sa HR professionals yung mga seminars po natin. So anyone can attend po. If it's something that speaks to you, if it's something that you're interested in, pwede po kayong umattend. Hindi po requirement na kayo po ay HR professional. Thank you everyone and I hope you had a great evening. Happy dinner po sa lahat. Thanks and goodbye po.